Hello again and welcome. I am happy to be able to come to you again and share a short lesson which might be helpful while we are trying to cope with life during this time of social and economic stress. This week's lesson is another good example of a biblical story which has a definite application to our current circumstances. It comes from Exodus chapter 16. It is the story of God's provision for the Israelites in the wilderness, specifically providing manna and the quail. The Israelites had been freed from bondage in Egypt and were now traveling towards the Promised Land. The first part of the journey, except for the incident at the Red Sea, was relatively uneventful. They had brought with them supplies which they thought would be ample for a short journey. They thought they could replenish these supplies along the route. Additionally, they had their flocks, which would also provide some nourishment as they traveled onward. Thus, they were not really in a drastic predicament, at least food-wise. It soon, however, became apparent that the luster of their long-sought and long-awaited liberation had begun to wear off. Most probably, their initial store of provisions had begun to dwindle. The first shortage would probably have been flour, from which to make bread, which was a staple for their normal diet. They did not want to slaughter their flocks for food, so meat also became a concern. The people began to voice their complaints. They complained directly against Moses and Aaron, although they were really complaining against God. Obviously, they had not reached a point where they trusted God to meet their everyday needs. As they left the fringes of Egyptian civilization and journeyed out into the desert wilderness, things became less certain, less comfortable, and less hospitable. They traveled 3 days without water from Elim to Marah. When they arrived there, they found that the water was bitter and not fit to drink. So Moses interceded with the Lord to make it good to drink, and God complied, providing sweet water to satisfy the Israelites' thirst. At this point, they had only been gone from Egypt just about a month. Shortly after this water shortage event, the people started to complain about other things, specifically the food. The Bible does not tell us when or even if Moses presented their complaints to God. However, God responded anyway. He responded quickly, he responded compassionately and generously. He sent manna from which to make bread and quail to provide meat. He also provided his presence to guide and reassure the people. This was the beginning of the pillar of cloud in the day and the pillar of fire at night. Thinking about it for a moment, what do you think was the purpose of the provisions God supplied and the physical manifestations of his presence? I think it was a tangible reassurance that God was there, that he was powerful enough to meet their needs, and that he would follow through with the promises he had made to their ancestor Abraham centuries before. This understanding emphasizes that the Lord knows our needs, he hears our prayers, and is kindly disposed to providing for all of our needs. Not necessarily our wants, but at least our basic needs. I also believe that we can apply the lessons learned from this passage of Scripture directly to the current situation. You know, the entire world is reeling under the impact of the spread of COVID-19. Numbers of deaths worldwide are increasing. Required social distancing robs us of needed interaction with others of our own species, especially those whom we love and hold most dear. The world economy is in shambles, causing many people to wonder how they will survive financially, and ultimately maybe physically, as the state of affairs seemingly grinds on. A feeling of helplessness tends to creep into our psyche. However, by drawing on the lessons from Exodus 16, we can know that God will continue to aid us and comfort us and provide for us if we will only let him. God is omniscient which means he's all-knowing. He is omnipotent, which means he's all-powerful. And he is omnipresent, all around us, all the time. He can take this pandemic and make it a positive force for good, both in our nation and in the world. In fact, I believe he already has. Consider the fact that because of disease transmission fears, we have had fairly strict social distancing guidelines. That meant we could no longer assemble for worship as we have in the past. However, the development and use of technology and online services has forced us onto a new platform, a platform with the prospect of reaching many more people on any given day. Churches now have the capability to reach out, to keep up with, and to effectively minister to a wider audience than they ever have before. We have the means to publicize needs, to generate responses in a more immediate and tangible manner. Because of the caring attitude, of generosity of numerous organizations and individual persons, we are not going to go hungry or thirsty or naked during this time of anxiety and tension. It is important to embrace the central theme of this particular passage of Scripture. That theme is having a strong faith. Having a strong faith equals trusting the Lord to provide during any crisis, even one like we are now experiencing. This level of trust inspires confidence, it promotes peace, and it fosters understanding and compassion towards our fellow man. Those attitudes are things the world sorely needs more of at the present time. As I record this video, state and local authorities are preparing to relax some of the restrictions. The threat is certainly not over, particularly to the elderly, those with pre-existing conditions, or those with otherwise compromised immune systems. Things will not return to normal overnight, nor even in a few days or in a few weeks. And with that thought in mind, I would ask you to pray earnestly, to be careful, stay safe, and practice vigilance in regards to all health issues, both physical and spiritual. Until next time.